Trump says we will not resume trade talks with Canada, quote, for a while. Now, you've got a strong Canada connection. Are you happy with that?
No, I'm not happy with that. There's been a little confusion because Canada was caught offside a little bit. They went through an election.
Just what we needed, another hockey metaphor. Thanks, Kevin O'Leary. We'll get back to him towards the end of the video, but first we're going to check out Larry Brock going head-to-head with our current Justice Minister, our Attorney General, Sean Fraser. Sean Fraser is a mess. Larry's going to clean the floor. After that, we'll see Michael Cooper in committee, and then we'll slip over to the House of Commons floor to watch him mess with a couple of Carney's cabinet minions. It's a mess as well. Then we'll have Rachael Thomas in another committee investigating AI and the mistakes that the Liberal government have made there with their silly policies. It's ridiculous. Then we'll get back to Kevin O'Leary. Anyhow, gang, let's get into this. Let's kick it off. Larry Brock, Sean Fraser. Sean Fraser is a doofus. Let's go.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
The bill itself, Madam Speaker, is some 35 pages long. It makes 80 significant changes to the criminal code. In fact, the title of the bill itself is a Bail and Sentencing Reform Act. The question I put to the minister is regarding sentencing. He spoke very generally about the consecutive sentence aspect to the bill. He spoke about the aggravated features of the bill for sentencing purposes. But he did not mention the one particular clause in this 35-page bill that actually increases the sentence for one particular offense. So I would like to know, of all the serious violent crime that is happening in this country, extortion alone up 330% in 10 years, why this particular Liberal Justice Minister and his government sought to change the penalty for contempt of court from 90 days to 2 years less 1 day. That is the only sentence in this bill that seeks a change.
Good question. Madam Speaker, before I address the member's question directly, I want to thank him for the conversations that we've had and for his advocacy to advance some of the specific reforms that are in fact included in this bill. This bill was not intended necessarily to revisit the penalties associated with every offence that exists in the criminal code. Of course, serious offences deserve serious penalties, but it was important for me to address the issue of contempt of court, because frankly, one of the themes that is carried throughout the text of this bill is really underlined by a culture of a lack of respect for the law. You can see the measures that we put in place to address that with dealing with violent repeat offenders, addressing the number of crimes that are outstanding. But I wasn't satisfied that we had appropriate penalties in place for those who would openly defy orders of the court. It's important to me that we not only have penalties associated with criminal activity that takes place in communities, but that we have a regime that will protect the integrity of the court's processes if all other offences are going to be treated with respect to Canadians at large.
Who does Sean Fraser think he's fooling? Not this guy. How about you? Let me know in the comments. We're going to swing over to an ethics committee investigation. They're trying to figure out if Mark Carney has a shred of dignity or any ethics. This corrupt guy that's so non-transparent. He's hiding everything. He's hiding his money so he doesn't have to pay taxes in Canada. Like, what a ridiculous thing for a public officer, a prime minister, to do. Michael Cooper is going to bust it out. Let's take a peek.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Knoble, I just want to go through some of your testimony and to make sure that I understand it correctly. Is it accurate that blind trust misuse is a problem?
I mean, I would say any misuse of a company or trust is a problem.
And what I understood you to say was that the best safeguard is transparency. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a prime minister whose answer to everything is that all of my assets are in a blind trust, so everything is okay. Now, that, based on your testimony, that isn't sufficient, but there's an even bigger problem, and that is because the Prime Minister set up 3 multi-billion-dollar investment funds that he registered in Bermuda and the Cayman Islands. The Prime Minister is entitled to something called carried interest pay. That's essentially future bonus pay based upon the performance of those funds. The Prime Minister picked the companies. He knows what the holdings of these funds are. He's disclosed the three funds, but he has not disclosed what the holdings are in these funds. And therefore, the Prime Minister is not being transparent about potential conflicts of interest. So would you concur that even if the Prime Minister isn't technically by law under the Conflict of Interest Act required to disclose the holdings of those funds that he set up, in the interest of transparency, shouldn't he?
I mean, I understand that people will usually abide by whatever laws they have to comply with. And again, of course, a prime minister or a public official has a higher responsibility or a higher role model. I would still expect any citizen, especially high net worth individuals, to still disclose all the assets that they have. I do not think that a blind trust can create enough safeguard to ensure that no problems will be there. So it's much better for at least authorities to know exactly what assets are held in a trust. But in the case of a prime minister or another public officer, ideally the full general public would know what's there, and then they can judge whether any conflict of interest is happening with a government contract or with any other transaction, instead of simply having to rely blindly on what is happening.
We have a prime minister who has tens of millions of dollars tied up in offshore tax havens. Technically, under the law, he can do that. As you note, the Prime Minister really ought to be held to a higher standard as a public office holder, as the highest public office holder in the land. In your view, should the Conflict of Interest Act be amended to prevent public office holders from using tax havens? Does that, to you, seem like something that would make sense?
And as I said earlier, I feel like the biggest concern is what is defined in the country as tax haven, because if you're only covering maybe small islands, they can still be using major financial centers that might not be considered a tax haven by Canada, but can create just as many risks as a small island. And I would expect that, again, to be used for everyone. Like that same standard. Of course, a public officer, but anyone that there will be a disclosure. Maybe some countries have chosen for full prohibition of going for a tax haven. At least another alternative to be explained why exactly you need to go to a tax haven, why only a tax haven would offer you something, and whether that is a reason just to reduce their taxes or escape other laws that would apply in Canada to anyone else, or if there's a good reason that is not about a tax, it's not about reducing taxes or escaping any law. So maybe there is one, I can't imagine one, but maybe they have a reason.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Staying with Michael Cooper, we're going to pop over to the House of Commons floor and watch him destroy Stephen McKinnon, the House leader, who is a clammy, creepy man who's full of fear-mongering and propaganda, then followed up by Wayne Long, who's the Secretary of Financial Institutions. He's got no neck and he's a little freakazoid. I think that describes his shape. Michael Cooper puts these guys down. Cooper is a fun guy to watch.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister stands to make tens of millions of dollars in future bonus pay from 3 investment funds that he registered in Bermuda and the Cayman Islands. So a simple question, how many other investments does the Prime Minister have in offshore tax havens?
Good question.
That member knows very well that all members in this House must abide by some of the strictest, most stringent ethics rules in the world. The Prime Minister has not only met but exceeded his requirements under those ethics guidelines, Mr. Speaker, and he will continue to do so.
Mr. Speaker, expert testimony reveals that the Prime Minister's company, Brookfield, is the biggest tax dodger in Canada, having avoided paying a staggering $6.5 billion in taxes in just 5 years. As chair of Brookfield, the Prime Minister registered 3 investment funds in Bermuda and the Cayman Islands in which he stands to make millions. So again, how much does the Prime Minister have in offshore tax havens?
Once again, Mr. Speaker, Canada lives under the most stringent and strong ethics guidelines for designated public office holders in the world. All members must comply with these requirements. These requirements are met very transparently, including the Prime Minister's, which is all, of course, available for the public to view. These ethics guidelines in Canada are strong, and we should be proud of that, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals speak of a stringent and robust regime, yet the Prime Minister's company, Brookfield, registered multiple funds to a bike shop in Bermuda, all to avoid paying taxes in Canada, a bike shop. The Prime Minister is dodging a simple question, so I will ask it again. How much money does he have in offshore tax havens? Just a number, please.
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, on April 28th, Canadians had a choice between a leader with world and business experience versus a leader with no experience outside of this House. Canadians spoke loud and clear. They elected a leader that's going to build Canada, invest in Canada. They elected a leader that's going to make Canada the strongest economy in the G7. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister refuses to come clean about his offshore tax havens. Meanwhile, he lectures young Canadians that they need to sacrifice more. Well, after 10 years of these Liberals, they can't afford food, they can't afford rent, they have nothing left to give. So when will the Prime Minister park his hypocrisy, come clean, and tell us how much cash he has stashed in offshore tax havens?
Mr. Speaker, the party opposite has had a bad week. We understand that. They're focused on their leader and they're focused on a revolting caucus. But on this side of the House, we are focused on building Canada. We are focused on investing in Canada. On November 4th, we will come forth with a budget that will invest, build our economy in the strongest into the G7. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Steve McKinnon makes my skin crawl. He's such a fearmonger, and you can tell he's insincere. However, Wayne Long, with his little T-Rex arms and no neck, he doesn't seem insincere. He seems like he drank all the Kool-Aid. Person that doesn't drink any of the Kool-Aid is Rachael Thomas. She's an MP from Alberta. Let's check her out. She's investigating AI here in a committee investigation, Canadian Heritage. And there are so many hidden things in Bill C-11 and C-18 that will be exposed. Let's go.
Dr. Geist, I'm going to invite you to go a little deeper in terms of some former thoughts that you shared with the committee already. On Bill C-11, you outlined that you were a bit of a critic of that bill. In fact, you said, instead of modernizing the law to reflect the current reality, the government chose to retain an outdated model and penalize Canadian digital success stories in the process. End quote. With regards to Bill C-18, the Online News Act, you stated, quote, Bill C-18 has been an utter disaster, leading to millions in lost revenues with cancelled deals, reduced traffic for Canadian media sites, declining investment in media in Canada, and few options to salvage this mess. End quote. Obviously not a fan of either of these pieces of legislation and where they landed, and of course the negative repercussions that has on the Canadian public. Here we are at the table, considering a new technology, AI, and trying to figure out how best to legislate it. In your mind, how do we make sure that we do not create that same mess that was created within Bill C-11 and Bill C-18? What's that line in terms of freedom versus restriction for the sake of public safety, the public good, I guess?
The stuff I write, people are just able to look back on, so I got to be careful sometimes, I guess.
I didn't even use AI to find it.
Fair enough. It's not hard to find, I think. And so you're right. I was certainly critical of both of those bills, and quite frankly, I think that the concerns that were expressed at the time have been borne out. We haven't seen any money really come forward with C11. That bill is now, the Streaming Act is now stuck in the courts. And C18, I think, has raised real concerns at the end of it. There is some Google money, to be sure. Whether or not that's more than the money that was already being generated through Facebook deals and Google deals is an open question, plus there have been some costs. I would come back to the response I just gave a moment ago, and I think that the starting point for some of that legislation was wrong-headed. It wasn't that we shouldn't regulate in where appropriate. It was that some of the approaches around regulation really seemed to be more about how can we generate some new revenues to support of particular policies. And as we sort of hit a reset button, and I have a feeling, and there is this sense that there is now a willingness to rethink some of these things. The digital services tax would be another example of rethinking some of the earlier approaches. It seems to me that one of the things that we do need, and it comes back to a theme that we've now come back to on a number of occasions, is what are really our fundamental objectives here? Is it that we want OpenAI to fork over more money for some of this, or for some of those kinds of uses? Is it that we want to see our culture better reflected, that we want to have the Canadian digital sovereignty better protected? And then we need to prioritize some of those things. So I think, for example, one of the biggest concerns that we have in the AI space, since it's already been put on the table, has to do with the failure to enact modernized privacy legislation. I mean, quite frankly, this is very much about data, and the fact that we have struggled to move forward with modernized privacy rules really ought to have been job one with respect to many of these issues, and one would hope that we would deal with those things. I think that we can find ways to position ourselves as leaders here without creating barriers by focusing on things like transparency, by perhaps trying to adopt a leadership position when it comes to some of the opt-out models. I didn't have the chance to fully respond to Ms. Royer, but it does seem to me that opt-out model is the right one in terms of creating efficiencies and opportunities for both creators and for the platforms, but it hasn't been implemented very well. If you're treating opt-out as this is just like search and choose to opt out of anyone finding you online and being indexed in or being included in a large language model, that's not the choice that we should be talking about. And so there's an opportunity, I think, to do the opt-out system to be truer to that notion of genuine choice with respect to large language models. And we can try to adopt some leadership there as well.
My next question is, you know what, I'll put the question on the table and you'll get a chance to answer it in a moment because I only have limited time. We had Dr. Carney here at the last meeting, and she's quite a talented and I would say intelligent scientist when it comes to AI. It's her area of specialty. And with regards to transparency, she was talking about that and actually some of the challenges that poses. I'm out of time, so I'll cut myself off there, but I will come back to you, Dr. Geist, with a question with regards to transparency. My apologies.
How about Rachael Thomas, gang? Like, she's one to watch for sure. Another person that people do pay a lot of attention to, I could take him or leave him. He's entertaining sometimes. Kevin O'Leary does have the inside track on some information, possibly. You never know if you can trust him. Let's go. Let's take a look.
Trump says we will not resume trade talks with Canada, quote, for a while. Now, you've got a strong Canada connection. Are you happy with that?
No, I'm not happy with that. There's been a little confusion because Canada was caught offside a little bit. They went through an election. The Canadian government should only have one voice, and that's the Prime Minister. And so we have a little bit of the Prime Minister, who's just been newly appointed, herding cats in terms of the Canadian premiers. Doug Ford was the one that put out that video. You know, one of the things I want to make an observation about, Stuart, that has come to my realization, less than a year ago, when all of these governments were going to Mar-a-Lago, when it was an informal invitation from Trump to go meet his administration before they took over, people like the Italian Prime Minister and the British and everybody else showed up there at Mar-a-Lago for the informal meeting. But it was not just Trump they met with. They met with all the staffers and the people who write the policy, and those informal relationships were formed. Unfortunately, Ford didn't do that. Another premier did, Danielle Smith, and she's way better off today with the administration than he is, because Ford is, just for lack of a better word, in kind of a war with Trump, a PR war, which isn't serving either side very well. And I think this will get fixed. It's a rounding error in terms of the longer term potential. I happen to stay in the glass half full zone on Canada. These two economies have to get together for one reason. If people don't understand what the Chinese want, they want world supremacy on commerce and on military might. And the only way we're going to stave that off is unite the two economies. They don't have to buy the country, but behemoth American market with all the resources Canada has, and then tell the Chinese, who are looking at us from the north, we have enough money to spend to defend the north in perpetuity. You try anything up there and we'll spank you like a baby seal on the ice.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that ending, but there you go.
I would have to agree with O'Leary that China is a problem. The PRC have their claws sunk in deep. They control a lot of Canada and Canadian federal politics, provincial politics, municipal politics already. Just look at David Eby, look at Mark Carney. That's it. What are you going to do? My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. Like, share, subscribe, get notified. Come and join us for one of our live shows. We have a fun chat room. We watch the question periods. We do some other live shows in the evenings. Come and check it out. Watch another video. That's it. Smash the like, hit subscribe, ring my bell. That's it. We'll catch you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.
Oh, yeah.